What is going on, everybody? Today we're going to go over the basics of hair loss, the different types of alopecia that are out there, as well as some other things, and then talk about what the primary thing is that most of us on this channel are working on and dealing with. Now, this is going to be used as kind of a primer video for those that don't know as much about hair loss, or if you just want to sit back and learn some new information. I promise that there's some stuff in here that you probably haven't heard before. So let's go over what some of the primary forms of hair loss are. First, we have alopecia areata. Now, this is when small circular portions of your hair come out. Now, this is generally something where the hair comes back in only a couple months, and this is not a permanent thing. This is due to stress or things like this. Next, we have traction alopecia, and this is caused by people who wear their hair tied back so tight that it literally damages the hair follicles from so much stress being on them. Next, we have trichotillomania, which is actually hair loss caused by pulling and or twisting with your finger. There is tinea captis, which is actually a fungal infection. Finally, there is androgenetic alopecia. So what most of us are dealing with is that last one, androgenetic alopecia. Androgenetic alopecia, interestingly enough, this actually affects about 50 million men in the United States and 30 million women in the United States, which is a total of about 80 million out of our presumed 350 million-ish people that we have living here, which is almost, probably close to 25% of those living inside of the states. Now let's talk a little bit about androgenetic alopecia, where we started finding out about it and more. So curiously enough, this is actually something that the ancient Greek doctors started studying back in ancient times, and they didn't really have a grasp on it. And it wasn't really fully understood until around 1949 when Hamilton, a scientist, through some simple observations and experiments, tested what was causing the male pattern baldness that he saw, and he condensed it down to 3 factors. What are those 3 factors? Well, they're androgens, they're genetics, and age. Particularly, we've come to know that one androgen in specific, DHT in specific, or dihydrotestosterone. So let's go back and talk a little bit about what androgens are. Androgens are an important function in regular male sexual development before birth and even during puberty. Androgens also have other specific effects that they have on both men and women, such as regulating hair growth and sex drive. The principal androgen, the one that we're most familiar with, is testosterone. Now, this is produced in men in the testes and adrenal glands, and in women it's produced in the ovaries to a much lesser degree, and the adrenal glands as well. Interestingly enough, testosterone plays a key role in male pattern hair loss. However, it only affects the hair follicles which show a predisposition to sensitivity of the testosterone. In susceptible men, testosterone meets in the hair follicle an enzyme that converts the testosterone into DHT, or dihydrotestosterone. Turns out this is actually, DHT is a more potent androgen than testosterone. It has the ability to bind to receptors in the follicle, and this binding can have a somewhat undesirable effect on our hair follicles, which causes miniaturization and shrinkage of the hairs. Now, DHT binding to the hair follicle receptors which receive DHT is kind of exacerbated by a gene that they've discovered, which they've labeled as the AR gene, that provides instructions for making a protein called an androgen receptor. The androgen meets the receptor, the DHT meets the DHT receptor, binds, and therefore the effect is had. This in turn allows the DHT to enact on the hair follicle and cause the beginnings of hair loss. Now, there's a whole lot of speculation as far as where hair loss comes from genetically. Is it from the father's side, from the mother's side? Is it from the mother's father? Is it from the mother's father? All of these arguments out there, and to be honest, the research is still inconclusive and we don't know. But what is inherited is the tendency for follicles in the presence of DHT to progressively become smaller over time. So what happens? The hair growth cycle shortens, right? So this is usually maybe a 6-year-long cycle. That cycle shortens. Hairs become thinner and thinner. They miniaturize, and more hairs begin to shed. Some follicles eventually completely die off, while others shrink to a very, very small size, incapable of sustaining what's considered healthy hair. Interestingly enough, different ethnic groups have different predispositions to the effect of DHT on the hair follicles. For example, those that are Chinese, those that are African American and Native Americans are more likely to keep their full head of hair than those that are white. Go me. Statistics show that roughly 30% of men in their 30s are already suffering from hair loss, which continues to about 80% of men by the time that they're 80. So it's a continual gradual cycle of hair loss. But this is not the case with other ethnic groups, which is interesting. But all this talking about DHT and androgens, one might ask the question, is this the end all? Do we have the answer for sure? Is it 100% locked in? Is this the way things are? Well, no. It's interesting because there's been other studies that show that oxidative stress and mitochondrial activity may have a factor inside of androgenetic alopecia. For all of the things that we've accomplished, it seems as if hair loss is just too tough a nut to crack, which is a problem for us, of course, because we're here on this channel, we're talking about hair loss, we're talking about hair systems and things like this. So once again, that leads into, what are your solutions? Is there any way to stop hair loss? There isn't, no. Now, you can take Rogaine, right? You can take finasteride. Each of those medications have a different effect chemically on you, which stimulate hair growth, but it cannot be stopped. If you stop taking Rogaine and finasteride, the hair loss will continue. It's a preventative thing. Finasteride, in short, I'll make another video on it, but it blocks DHT from having an effect on you. Of course, there is hair transplant surgery, which is taking the hair follicles, which hopefully don't have any predisposition to hair loss, and replacing those where you had hair loss. And lastly, hair systems, the thing that we've been talking about most on this channel. Hair systems are a way to completely circumvent this whole thing, and in an absence of the scientific material to understand and conquer this, it allows us to completely go around the issue and wear prosthetics, which is something that we don't have to worry about putting different chemicals in our body that have effects on us, and we let nature run its course while we enjoy the benefits of modern technology and better scalp technology and things like this. So I hope you found this interesting, guys. I hope that it was useful to you, and in the next couple videos we'll also talk about what finasteride is and Rogaine and some of the potential side effects and things like that. Talk to you soon.